Still tuning in on Bush Radio 89.5 FM. Good morning, Cape Town, or should I say good morning, world. And on the line, I'm joined by Dr. Schaffers. I don't know if you can lower the radio. I think I can hear myself there from your side.
No, my radio is the one. Mine is the one.
Okay.
Yeah, I know, because I know the feeding back. So
yes.
I open my radio.
Dr. Joe Schaffers, a former District 6 museum tour guide, as well as the resident musician from the museum from Strandfontein, who has received Honorary Doctorate from the University of Edinburgh in recognition of his efforts to educate the public about the community that was torn apart by apartheid. Sir, thank you very much for having time to speak to us. How's it like for now, Monday? We're celebrating Mandela Day, and you have a chance to speak to us, all of us.
Yeah, no, it's actually fabulous, especially a day like this. It's a special day, which, set the pace for us, for our democracy. And all the dreams and aspirations that we had, and I'm unfortunate to say that at this stage hasn't reached the heights that we thought it would reach. But as I said, we have to battle and just got to cheat till we get to it.
Coming back to you as somebody who's been there for many years, with wisdom, learning a lot from people like you, even me, talking to you, it's an honor. I want to know, though, before we get into your career in the District 6 Museum, can you tell us back when you were growing up in South Africa, those days, summarize it for us. How was it like? I know that we see it in TV, we're being told. Sometimes you're thinking like, it's not that big, especially if you are born in a free or democratic South Africa.
Yeah, but remember, we were born, I was born in 1939. So, and of course, the nationalist government took over in 1948. And that's when our problems also started with the various apartheid rules and laws that came in. And that made living very, very difficult also. And especially the division of people into different race groups and changing the mindsets of people and making them look at each other differently. That's when things were pear-shaped, and this is what they knew. Was a really called divide and rule strategy, which was based on the Nazi ideology. And it worked extremely well. In fact, I'm almost inclined to think it still works. That's how bad it was, and that's how well it was orchestrated. So even today, under the name of democracy, you still find people looking at each other differently. And that shouldn't be. Because I always maintain there's only one race, and that's the human race. In my talks, I always tell people that if we should take 100 or 1 million people, and we put them all on one space, and we ask them to press their finger, what color is going to come out? Now, until we bleed in different colors, we come from one race, and that's the human race. And mindsets have got to be changed. We've got to accept each other as another person, another comrade, another friend, another family member, and not be caught up in divisions. And then only in that way can we start surviving and living together in harmony.
Yeah, ne? I'm loving the fact that, you'll find that most people who were living during those time of apartheid, most of them are saying that we should live together. There's no time for fighting back or having a grudge. Let's just keep it moving. Love one another. As respect, as you said, we're all one.
Yeah, it's an important thing. You see, when you have divisions, there's always infighting. And we can't afford that. Our life is too short. And as you know, that even our world is falling apart with global warming. And we need each other to survive. We cannot afford to fight each other. Why? The world is big enough for all of us. But it's through greed, selfishness, corruption, that we are having all the problems we're having. That's over and above the other great curse in our world at the moment, and especially infiltrating our country, is the drugs. So our youth, our kids are being caught up in this other terrible phase, which is creating another dimension. And doesn't need it. We've got another war hands, it's the drug war. which then leads to the crime that carries on because they need money to support the habit. And this is where we find that more and more things are going pear-shaped and wrong. And we need to see how we can address it. I mean, in our earlier years where we didn't have those problems, people lived there and were poor, but they survived. Nobody tried to steal from each other. Now it suddenly becomes a matter of survival, and a lot of that's brought about by your illicit drugs and, crime being escalating all over. People can't even go and sit in a tavern just to go and relax. You never know when guys are coming in because another group is coming in that want to take over the area. They just start shooting at them wildly. And in most cases, the perpetrators are never found. Or if they are known, the people are just scared to go be in court to give evidence. So we're really sitting with a lot of problems we're going to be dealing with. And we've got a youth that's growing up. We're going to show them examples that you can. There is a life way. But it also depends on our government people running the country to step in and say enough is enough. We've got to start taking control and getting this country done. This is the most beautiful country in the world as far as I'm concerned. I've been to quite a few, but definitely South Africa is right now. Will always be, but we need to get our act together.
If you have just tuned in now, we're speaking to Dr. Joe Schaffers, former District 6 Museum tour guide, as well as the resident musician for the museum all the way from Strandfontein, who has received an honorary doctorate from the University of Edinburgh in recognition of his efforts to educate the public about the community that was torn apart by apartheid. So coming back to your city health inspector days for 34 years. Yeah, that is long, eh?
Yes, you see, that is where I've really learned about life and I've looked at how people are striving to get their lives together. Because when I started that, when I matriculated, and I landed up in one or two different jobs. I eventually landed up with a huge fishing concern in working in the docks. And I was earning quite a nice salary there, working on what was then the forerunner of computers. Burroughs machines were doing the wages and doing work like at an office. But for me, it wasn't. I was sitting there and I was thinking of folk. Then they were starting to be shifted out. The apartheid had come in and people being moved out and being put into these places far away from where they lived before. And I understood the pain of those people and I thought, look, I've got to do something for my community. How can I possibly work for my community? I'm not an activist with wanting to throw petrol bombs and that kind of thing to get their voices out. I thought there's another way we can do it, is by going to assist the people where they are. And that's what made me decide, look, let me see where I can do work for the community. Then I started studying to become a health inspector. And the firm, they gave me the time off to do the studies because they also thought, okay, if I do that, I'll work for them as a health inspector, which will fall in line with the policies of the country that they have a so-called colored health inspector working within their complexes. When I was qualified, I then told them, unfortunately, no, I'm going to work for my community, and then I'm going to work for the city council. And there I worked for 34 years trying to improve a lot of our people in different, ways. The health inspector's job is very, very varied. There's not only inspection of shops and stuff like that and food inspections. There's also dealing with infectious diseases. It's working with clinics. It's working with nurses. It's working with the patients. So that for me was another way of getting through to it. And I was also involved with sport. I was involved with music. So all that helped me very much in my work. I could work in all gang-ridden areas. And in all my years, 34 years with the city council, never mind being assaulted as an official, I wasn't even sworn at by any of the so-called gangsters because I could relate to them growing up in District 6, learning how to interact with people, learning to understand their way of living, and trying to change their way of thinking. And through the medium of sport, especially soccer. As you know, we are soccer crazy country. So that was one way. And then, of course, my love for music and playing in various bands. So people began to know me in that sense. And it helped tremendously. And it was the greatest joy in my life working with the community at all stages as a health inspector. Yeah, as a result of that, I got a lot of acknowledgement from City Council, got recognition, got a lot of accolades and all that, but it wasn't for that I was doing it. I was doing it for our people. People who were lost, people who were thrown out of their areas, people who moved. It takes about, as far as I'm concerned, 30 to 40 years to build a community. And suddenly these strong communities were torn apart by the apartheid system. People were torn out of their respective areas and then thrown willy-nilly into areas they didn't even know existed. Taken away from everything that's familiar to them. Their family, their friends, their sports clubs, their churches, their schools, their recreational areas. Everything that was familiar to them was just torn apart. They were just torn apart from that and thrown into what is generally known in our areas as the Cape Flat. Up in Johannesburg, they were thrown to places in Soweto. In Durban, the same thing happened. In PE, the same thing happened. And you find people sitting there, totally lost. And a lot of the older folks, they just died of broken hearts because everything they knew that was familiar to them was taken away. And they were just thrown into the wilderness. There's such a lot we can talk about. I can keep you sitting
I know. So, with time.
Yeah.
So briefly, quickly, you've worked at District 6 Museum for quite some time, for years,
20 years.
Educating people, exchanging information. How's that journey? Quickly, just briefly.
That journey was absolutely fantastic, and I promise you that it was one very, very big surprise when one day I was just called by the Professor Tom Slater we were still one of the educators then, to tell me they had submitted an application to the University of Edinburgh. They've been coming to the museum for about 9 years already, and they just felt that it had affected their students so much that it changed the mindset of the student about life, and they felt that I needed to be given an honorary doctorate, which they put into place, and it should have been given already 3 years ago, but due to COVID, it was put off every time until this year, and I was able to go. But what an experience. I'm telling you, it was something that I never will ever experience again, and it is absolutely amazing.
And I want to know, though, when it comes at your age, you're receiving a doctorate, falling in line with education, how important education is, especially for yourself. You've seen it has opened a lot of doors in different ways. I know that with our generation, it's not easy to go to school with an empty stomach or maybe not having electricity at home. There's a lot of social ills that sometimes stop young people not going to school. Not the matter of they don't want to go to. We do, but the problem is there's these social ills that are still on our way. For someone like you who've been there up and down, any words for us young people?
Well, this is what I'm trying to say is that it's not only for the young, it's actually for the authorities to start getting their act right. There's a lot of youngsters who are keen to learn, but due to being stifled by not being able to get to school. Look, just trying to get to school is a major problem. Your traffic problem, the distance they have to travel, some of the schools that they have to attend to, some of those schools still on pit latrines. There's nothing healthy about it. We were fortunate in a city we didn't have problems like it. But I'm looking at the outlying areas. And then you got the distance they've got to be walking to get to school because there's no transport. I mean, it is soul destroying when there are kids trying to get to school. They haven't got, as you said, they've got no food. They go to school with empty stomachs. There used to be feeding schemes. That's fallen away. So the kids don't even get something when they get to school. And it's on an empty stomach, and then coming to back, you cannot study. You cannot concentrate on an empty stomach. So what if the kids drop out? Then they start looking for little jobs. They can't find jobs either. So, and that leads over to a life of crime because it's survival. And as much as I hate to say it, it falls slap bang into the lap of our authorities. And I don't care which party it is, they're all complicit in this. And they need to get their act together if they want to keep their people, to respect them as leaders. And that for me is amazing. You know what upsets me even more is those very leaders. Some of them grew up in townships. They know what the life is like. Yet they'll drive past those townships without blinking an eye at the conditions. And they're driving past in their Mercedes and their BMWs, and they're going about their business, and they're becoming richer, empowering themselves financially. But do they think of that? Do they think of the days they were there? No, they've forgotten that. And that is the thing. And they argue with each other, and it's all about the richness, empowering. They go for each other instead of turning around and say, guys, listen, young, our people out there suffering. Let us sit down now around the table and say how we can get this together. What's even more upsetting was that P.W. Botha in Parliament had said that when the day comes when the so-called, as they call it, black man runs this country, it's going to be run into the ground because they wouldn't know how to run. And you know what? They're actually proving him true. Instead of proving him wrong, they're actually proving what his words he said is true. And that for me hurts the most. That for me hurts the most. Because we've got the capability. We've got the same brain powers and the same brain size. Why aren't we doing the thing correctly? Now, those are the problems that I have. And I will say it forever, that it falls entirely into the laps of our people running the country to try and get their act together. Start thinking about themselves, their families, and their own friends, and thinking broader, and thinking how we can save this country from imploding. Because people are going to get restless, and people are becoming desperate, and you can't stop a hungry person when he wants to feed his family from wanting to raid his store as soon as somebody set the ball rolling. And that's what happened a couple of months ago, or last year.
Doctor?
Yeah.
Thank you very much for having time to speak to us. You know, we can have you the whole show until 12. But we had to let you go. And also, congratulations on your doctorate. And thank you for the beautiful knowledge you've been sharing throughout the country.
And you know, I owe a lot to Bush Radio also.
Sorry?
I owe a lot to Bush Radio. Bush Radio, yes. Bush Radio, I was one of the first presenters on Bush Radio.
Wow.
I had my own program called Memory Maker.
Memory Maker.
Yeah, you can go into your files there.
I'll look in the archives.
You look in the archives.
Yes.
Zain Ibrahim was my manager at that time. Adrian was one of his. There was Basi Montella, he was still there. And there was Victor. Fortunately, that young man, he hung himself. It was so tragic. He was one of our most favorite, assistants and helpers, engineers. There was, what's it called, Ketzel. He was also there. He became a member in the House of Parliament. He became one of their top guys in the House of Parliament. So I've got a lot of history with Bush Radio as well. And please tell Mr. McKay, they've got you and yourselves, keep the flag flying. Bush Radio is the mother of community radio, and guys must keep it up.
Thank you very much, sir. I can't add any further. Have a beautiful week.
Thank you, sir. Okay, you go well.
Sweet.
Bye-bye.
That is one of the legends, man, elders that we should celebrate in South Africa. As they say, respect your elders.